get up, and on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down.
And away we go. It's another episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. The last episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast in the month of February. So we are flying through time here, Phil Byrne.
We are flying through time. No DeLorean. We're going forward, not back. So we're not taking the DeLorean with us. But
30 seconds into the pod, and we're already making those references. I love it.
we're already making them. I quite honestly, last 2 weeks football withdrawal has been all-time high. There's nothing going on. We're talking about signing some guys from the CFL or something like that. I think I've gotten some notifications on that last week, and I'm like, yep, we're really stretching it out now, aren't we?
And okay. you want an old school reset here. We got a Deshae Townsend sighting in Allen Park. I mean, how exciting.
Yeah. So the closer that we get to the combine, the closer we get to the draft. And I think, honestly, once we kind of get into mid-March, that St. Patrick's Day season, obviously got the tournament and stuff like that going on. But and we'll kind of expand here just on my thought here, just really quick, just for the city of Detroit. But the way the Red Wings are playing, I think it'd be kind of cool to have a Red Wings home playoff game when the draft is going on.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know from a crowd downtown and just kind of parking situation what that would be like, but it's April in the D. It's been a long time, Vince. It has been a long time since we've had anything like that. Fox Sports Detroit's not even around anymore. How about that?
So who even knows what Bally Sports Detroit is at this point? I mean, One minute they're in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The next minute they're looking at Amazon taking over their assets. Who knows what's going on there? But in any case, Phil Byrne across the way, Vince Progard, that's me. Happy to be with you for, again, the final February episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. And, again, we are in that lull period where there's not a whole lot going on. And we knew there was going to be a lot of these over the course of the NFL offseason. But like you and I talked about in the green room, Phil, these last 2 weeks have been pretty tough.
Yeah, no, they have been. It's been a lot of how are we filling our Sundays? What are we doing? Vince lives in a house. I live in an apartment, for full disclosure. So it's not like I really have yard work or anything like that to do. So for me, it's mostly just tidying things up or getting to things that I didn't get to get to, throughout the course of the week. So, Vince, I know you always stay busy with the yard work and stuff like that as well on your side.
Believe me, I think I've picked up about 2 to 3 truckloads worth of tree branches over the course of the last few weeks, just from the wintertime storms we've had. So I'm taking every opportunity I can to be outside. I have a little running joke with one of my neighbors that says, even in February, if you fire up your lawnmower, I'll fire up mine, and they can both haul us, both away in straight jackets. So anything to get us through these dull times here. But so the best we can really do at this point, Phil, is just keep doing our look back at the regular season. Last week, we recapped the first 4 games, over the course of which the Lions went 3-1, and we figured now would be a good opportunity to kind of keep going in order there, ride that wave, and kind of break down the next 4 games to kind of get us to that halfway mark of the season. So where does that take us? That takes us to the third home game of the regular season against the young Carolina Panthers. So Here's a little bit of a breakdown on them. Brand new quarterback, the number 1 overall pick that they traded up to get in Bryce Young, former Alabama quarterback, a little undersized, but they were obviously thrilled with the upside and what he showed at Alabama as being a winning quarterback, a very stellar playmaker at that, and breaking in a new head coach as well in Frank Reich, a dynamic play caller and former NFL quarterback for a lot of years. The idea was going into it that if anybody could kind of work on a nice synergy level with Bryce Young, it would be Frank Reich. And going into this game, that really didn't look to be the case. A lot of growing pains, a lot of interceptions, a lot of sacks, not a whole lot of playmakers around him. And there were times when Reich looked a little lost as the play caller, and not really a whole lot changed in this game against the Lions. The Lions jumped out to an early 14-0 lead after one and really kept their foot on the gas the whole way. Probably the most well-rounded offensive game that we had seen by the Lions, at least until maybe the very late goings of the regular season, but did not turn the ball over in that game. I believe they were a perfect 4 for 4 in the red zone, and not a whole lot to complain about from the offense in that game against Carolina, which they wound up winning 42-24.
Yeah. So one thing about this game, all the stats aside, this is one where Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, was actually a scratch in this one, because looking at the stat sheet, he's not there. Sam Laporta had a 2-touchdown game, 3 receptions for 47 yards. Josh Reynolds was the breadwinner, though, of the receiving game for the Lions, 4 for 76 and a touchdown on 5 targets. David Montgomery solid through the ground as well, adding 19 carries for 109 yards and 1 touchdown. One thing that, and again, I was at this game. This game was very, very comfortable to watch. Never did I feel like the Lions were in any sort of danger of losing it, ever losing the lead. One thing that really struck out, though, for me watching the Panthers struggle was obviously beginning of the year, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. This was really the first week. I can't remember what the Texans did, but they did end up winning. And this was one of those first games where I thought, like, the road started to divert between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, where it looked like their teams were on different paths. The Texans really sort of bonded and started putting some great games together. The Panthers absolutely went downhill. Laviska Shenault, the former
Jacksonville
receiver,
Jaguars.
Yeah, so like he's on their roster, and I'm thinking, okay, well, this guy's probably going to be in the box sheet or box score for a couple of receptions or something like that. No, he actually had 5 carries for 27 yards. They were using him out of the backfield. That's how bizarre this Panthers setup had, where Adam Thielen, was like their number one receiver. But I mean, it's been 3 or 4 years, I think, since anyone has really considered Thielen to be a starting number one type of receiver.
And who was supposed to be the running threat? I think the big free agent acquisition in the offseason for the Panthers was Miles Sanders.
Yeah.
And wasn't he like 5 for 20 in that game or something of that parameter?
7 of 32. Yeah. So Chuba Hubbard actually went 9 of 35. So not getting much. David Montgomery obviously outpaced both of them put together. Not much to write home for the Panthers.
And I think this was the game that Gibbs got hurt in, if I'm not mistaken, and he would go on to miss the following week's game, if my memory serves me right.
Yeah, I think that is correct. Obviously, thankfully, he was able to bounce back, because Vince, how many times have we seen over the course of our Lions fandom that a promising young Lions rookie running back gets hurt? And glad to see that
paging Javid Best.
Javid Best. Who else we got? We got.
I'm sure Kevin Smith missed a couple games back in the good old days.
Yeah. So it's always a shame when it happens, but yeah, no, it was a comfortable win, and one that I mean, Lions led 28-10 at halftime, so it was a comfortable win for the Lions.
Yeah, never really in doubt, even though 24 points might seem like the Carolina offense started clicking things. Anytime you're in garbage time and the defense goes into kind of that prevent, you can't look too deep into the weeds with, they still gave up 24 points. I wouldn't get too concerned about that. So the lead into that one was a big road game at Tampa Bay. And this was the first time that we really started to see any type of flex action from the NFL schedulers. So the NFL took this game and moved it from a scheduled 1 o'clock kick to a 4:25 America's Game of the Week window on Fox. So this was kind of that first hint of, hey, America wants to see more of the Lions, and the Lions were given that extra window of exposure. So that was a cool thought to be able to experience that. Worked out for me because I had stuff going on during the afternoon, so that allowed me to do what I had to do during the day, and then I was able to enjoy the 425 window its entirety, so it worked out for me too. But we didn't really know what to expect. We knew that
No.
Todd Bowles, the head coach for Tampa Bay, also calls the plays on the defense. Real strong with the blitz. That's kind of been his calling card as a defensive mind the entirety of his career. What does Jared Goff tend to struggle the most with? He tends to struggle most against the blitz and when he's pressured. So we didn't really know what to expect. We knew we weren't going to have Jahmyr Gibbs in this one. So we knew that Montgomery was going to have to be the guy to kind of take some of that pressure off of Jared Goff. And what happened in the game was Montgomery actually got hurt, and it was basically Craig Reynolds to run the ball the rest of the way, and that was it. So that meant that either Jared Goff was going to have to win the game with his arm, or they were going to have to utilize some of their receivers with some reverses or some jet sweeps or whatnot to kind of get some run yards in a more unconventional manner. And the defense was going to have to really step up in a 20-6 victory for the Lions. I think they got it done on both counts. I think they were able to do just enough on offense. They played mistake-free football. They forced Baker Mayfield rather into throwing a costly interception when they were in plus territory. Tampa Bay couldn't run the ball, and I think couple that with a few untimely drops by the Tampa Bay receivers, they really couldn't get anything going against this Lions.
No, they really couldn't. This was a very solid defensive effort from the Lions altogether. Anytime you face Mike Evans, I think you just kind of feel like he's about to go off, and he is that type of playmaker that they have there. But yeah, Baker didn't really do much in this game. He kind of hit his stride a little bit more. I think in the following weeks after this, if memory serves me right. But yeah, great effort by the Lions defense. Offensively, as you did mention, from a stat point, yeah, Montgomery went out, and then Craig Reynolds, 10 carries for 15 yards. Forgotten man, Divine Ozigbo, 3 carries, 5 yards. Forgot he was even on the team.
From the New Orleans Saints practice squad.
Yeah, I think did he get hurt the following week or something? I'm not sure, but this was the Amon-Ra St. Brown
breakout game.
Breakout. And I mean, he's already had a number of these, but just a reminder of, he is a top 3, top 4 receiver when he wants to be in. 12 receptions, 124 yards, 1 touchdown on 15 targets. So 15 targets his way. I mean, that is high volume passing. If you had him in your fantasy league that day, you probably were sitting pretty, to say the least. Just his chemistry with Goff on some of those little inside passes, really doing the trick there. But yeah, a pretty, from a box score and from what I remember, a pretty dominant road win there. Lions continue to pick up these road wins, and I remember this was a fun post game in the locker room, because I think this is the one where oh wait, no,
that's 5, right? That's 5.
I think so. Yeah. So this is when the Lions post game in the locker room. It was like, hey, when are they going to post the Lions social media? Going to post this on Instagram or Twitter or whatever? Because it started to become, as they started to rack up the wins, must see. So usually an hour after the game or so, it'd get posted. But this was a fun one to watch for sure.
And they absolutely needed that game from St. Brown, like we kind of hinted at the beginning. We knew, of course, what Todd Bowles was going to do was to dial up that pressure, but it didn't seem to get to Goff very much over the course of the game. I think only 3 sacks for minimal loss. I think maybe 3 sacks for 13 yards lost total. So really not a huge impact from that standpoint. Obviously, Tampa Bay's run defense is as good as it gets, anchored by Vita Vea there up the middle. And like you talked about, Phil, Craig Reynolds was basically a non-factor in the run game. Montgomery got hurt early on, no Jahmyr Gibbs, so it was nice that they were able to ride with St. Brown and do just enough on offense. A couple other key points to take away from this game was, number one, the reemergence of Jameson Williams. So the first 4 games of the season, let's not forget, he was suspended due to the off-season on-site gambling mumbo jumbo that eventually was changed to a 4-game suspension, which meant he was eligible for the Carolina game we just talked about. I think he had maybe 2 catches for 5 yards and did nothing more than that, not even worth mentioning. This was the game, Phil, where he threw that big block on one of St. Brown's touchdowns.
That's right.
That was sort of like, okay, J-Mo's back. Now let's see what happens. Yep. And then late in the second half, he caught the second touchdown to go up by 2 scores. Am I correct on that?
I believe so. Yeah.
With that, I think it was about 45, 50-yard deep ball.
Yep. So, this was a massive game to have him kind of contribute once again. And so 2 receptions, 53 yards, 1 touchdown for J-Mo. At this point in time, I remember the talk on him, on sports talk radio or something like that. It was getting pretty toxic, right? People calling him a bust, people really getting under his skin, saying he's not focusing on football, he's not practicing hard enough. He started to put it together here. And one of the things that really makes him special is his willingness to block, as we've seen time and time again. That was on display in this game. And I think, obviously, the cameras aren't rolling in practice, but to know the work ethic that Amon-Ra St. Brown has, and always at the jugs machine, I know J-Mo sees that, right? And listen, we're not saying he needs to be Amon-Ra St. Brown and literally outwork everyone, but I'm sure he sees that as some sort of motivation, or some sort of like, I should probably be doing what he's doing and leading by example. And it was nice to kind of start to see the fruit of that labor. And it takes a long time to get in rhythm, in some of these things, and just not having those live reps in games, certainly impacted him.
And one thing that was of concern, at least to me in the offseason, going from Williams' rookie year, in which a lot of it was injury shortened, and trying to get him back into the swing of things, we kind of knew that was going to be a lost year. And then with the disciplinary action that took place in the offseason, coupled with the question marks carrying over from his rookie campaign, you weren't really hearing a whole lot from the Lions coaching staff or people in the know just how his offseason was going one way or the other. Because usually from Dan Campbell's perspective, there's not really a whole lot in the way of a filter there. So usually you can kind of hear the raw, unedited truth of just what's going on with J-Mo. And there was not really a whole lot coming out on him. Usually, if he is working with St. Brown, or the last guy to leave or the first guy to get there, you hear that. Or if he's out there getting extra reps with Goff, you hear that. You weren't really hearing a whole lot either way from him. And what you did hear was pretty generic of, okay, we got to make sure that he knows where he's supposed to be. That's pretty basic day one stuff. Or I think Ben Johnson was asked about it, and they're talking about time on task. That's day one stuff. So there was a lot of questions coming into this, exactly what kind of Jameson Williams we were going to get. So with that big block in the first half to set up the score and the touchdown in the second half, those were 2 positives that came at the right time.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, obviously he had the suspension, he had the injury. It was trying to get out of the doghouse too, which, I don't think Dan Campbell would flat out just say, oh yeah, he's in the doghouse, but I'm sure he was, And, so, by our count here, that makes the Lions 5-1, but a loss was on the horizon.
As always, I mean, we've seen the Lions go 6-2 a handful of times. Could they possibly, make it 6-1 and beyond? But that was not meant to be, as the Lions' second consecutive road game into the Baltimore Ravens, who I don't believe they have ever beat the Ravens in Baltimore in their current iteration. So the question would be, can they finally buck the trend? And I think by the time people even took their seats, it was 14-0. Lamar Jackson, first year on this new and improved contract extension. with his new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, made it look easy. And I think this was the first time that we had really seen all season the absolutely porous defense from this Detroit Lions team.
Well, it was that, and then first 3 drives result in touchdowns for the Ravens. First Lions drive, it's a 3. I guess technically not a 3-and-out, but they got 0 yards.
It was 28-0 before the Lions even got so much as a first down.
Yeah. The second Lions drive got 6 yards. The third Lions drive got 7 yards. So 3 drives, 13 yards, whereas the Ravens already put up 3 touchdowns. This was not the start the Lions wanted, obviously. If I remember right, I think, isn't there like a pass interference or something like, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to remember exactly, some of these penalties without watching the full blown game again. But this was deflating to watch. It wasn't as shocking as seeing the Lions lose at New England last year or the loss at Carolina last year, but
even in those games, like in the Patriots game, yeah, it was 29-0. The offense couldn't do anything, but they scored those 29 points in a real quirky way. They were directly scored off of turnovers. I think there was a special teams touchdown in there, short fields off of turnovers to set up easy scores, and then they kicked a lot of field goals. This one was just a good old-fashioned stomping with like almost 600 yards of offense, and anything that Baltimore wanted to do on offense, they were able to do with zero resistance whatsoever. And I think what it also brought to further light, Phil, is that the Lions continue to struggle with quarterbacks that have any type of real mobility to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. And, that was the issue week 2 with Geno and Seattle. It was definitely the week or the issue here as well. Lamar is capable of, and if I remember right, too, I think on a couple of these drives, the Lions may have had him kind of pinned back a bit, and then he escaped, of course, as he does.
Either that or he found the wide open guy downfield to set up yet another big play. 8 big plays in that game in the passing game, which I quantify as plays over 20 yards.
Yeah. And just this was a bloodbath, and it was over before you could even sit down. I remember I was running errands and got back. I think 2 minutes had already gone off the clock. Ravens with the ball, and it wasn't pretty. It felt like it was already over.
That's how it was for me too. So I actually turned the game off once it got to be like 35-0 in the second half. My wife's cousin and his fiance were over. We were going to have a little barbecue here at the house. I turned the game off and just visited with them. And it's almost better to have games like this in my mind where it's a complete blowout, because that way you know that we had no business winning this game. There's no question who the better team was, as opposed to one that you lose in a heartbreaker at the end. Not that either is fun to watch, but it's easier to handle the loss this way in my mind.
Yeah, the one true lopsided game of the season too. The only one that really just nothing went our way. I think even on some of the other losses that we had, you can talk Thanksgiving against Green Bay, or on the road at Chicago. There were elements that could have swung a couple things in the Lions' favor to make it a little bit more competitive, but there was no competitive nature in that game against Baltimore.
Burn the game film, which set up a very interesting game the following week. Monday Night Football finally coming back to Detroit in the Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell regime, in this version of the Lions that we all know. And the Las Vegas Raiders were coming to town. So it was a game that had been circled on a lot of Lions fans' calendars for a long time, and a very special game for me because my birthday was the same day as the Buccaneers game. And my wife hooked me up with tickets to the Monday night game as my birthday gift. So I was real jacked about it. So you and I were both at the game. You and I got to meet up before the game started. and catch up, which was a lot of fun. And it was going to be a good night with Monday Night Football coming to town. And it sure was a interesting game in that I have never seen more of a discrepancy in how the teams played the game from like a total yards and efficiency standpoint to what the final score actually was. So the Lions, even though they only won 26-14, dominated in total yards. I think it was like 485 to 150 or something like that. It was just a dominating performance from a total yard standpoint, a time of possession standpoint. But what really kept the game close was the Lions were -3 in turnovers, 2 fumbles, 1 interception by Goff, and they just let the Raiders hang around on the scoreboard, even though once the Raiders actually had the ball to start drives with, there was nothing they could really do all night long.
Yeah, no, there wasn't. Jimmy Garoppolo was awful. He was absolutely awful. He got benched.
This was really the last we saw of Jimmy G the whole rest of the season.
Yeah, yeah. So, they made the change there, and then wasn't McDaniel's fired like the next day or?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So
that was that was
yeah,
not the beginning of the end. That was the end.
that was the end. Yeah. What I remember from this game, though, really just first of all, this was the game that the Lions were wearing the alternate blue helmets. They look pretty cool. Still trying to figure out why I haven't been able to see a mini replica helmet of those blue alternate helmets available anywhere, online or anything like that. And then also the I don't know if you got this, but wasn't this the Aiden Hutchinson bobblehead thing at the game?
It was, and thanks to my wonderful work schedule, we weren't able to get down there in time to take advantage of those.
So I remember after the game, if you are a season ticket holder, you can go into the area or wrap around the area where they would be giving them out. And there was already probably about 400 people deep. And it was a Monday night game. Of course, I did not take work off on Tuesday or anything like that. And I really wanted one of the bobbleheads. He did like the Thriller, or not Thriller, but Billie Jean kind of leg kick kind of thing on the bobblehead. It was pretty cool looking. But I wasn't going to wait around until 1:30 in the morning at the stadium to get it. So for those that did, I saw them up on eBay the next day for going for like $200 or something like that. So you got
Looking
lucky.
back on it, that was probably a steal.
Yeah, yeah. But real dominant performance by the Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs, this was his breakout game. He went 26 of 152 and 1 touchdown on the ground. He had a run that was really, really impressive. Going in for a touchdown, or I think coming a couple yards short, I think, actually, now that I think about it. But dominant effort from the Lions. Jared Goff, yeah, again, he had the pick. It wasn't his best performance, but it was definitely easy, or more than enough to beat the Raiders.
And another good game by Sam Laporta. So this was kind of the game where we kind of let America know that, hey, we got some pretty stellar rookies on this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course that duo of Gibbs and Laporta, they pretty much had arrived by this point. Laporta already had that 2 touchdown game. He added another touchdown in this game. And yeah, I mean, they were just really integral parts of what Ben Johnson wanted to do offensively with this team the rest of the way.
And obviously no David Montgomery still in this game. They figured that the best course of action for him was going to be to leave him out with the bye week coming up after this Raiders game to kind of give him an extra couple of weeks left to play. And like you said, Phil, they definitely didn't need him in this game.
No. We're really able to take care of business from the onset. And, I just remember there was some pass play that I can't remember what happened. I don't know if Jimmy G got picked off or he just completely didn't see Devontae Adams, but Devontae Adams was not having it during this game. He was not happy at all. So
the big win by the Lions on Monday Night Football, and this was the 3rd game of the season that the Lions were on a national TV game in prime time. So the Lions got to go a perfect 3 for 3 in those games, really kind of letting America know that this team is definitely trending in the right direction. So 6-2 heading into the bye week. September is over and done with. October is over and done with. What was your mindset, Phil, at 6-2 at this point?
Well, for me, I mean, it was kind of one of those things looking at the second half of the schedule that it was really easy to get ahead of yourself, right? And kind of just see, okay, well, let's take a look. This is a win, this is a win, this is a win, this is a win. Dallas, is that where the loss is? Are we only losing 3 games this year? 2 games, um, and obviously there were other losses along the way, but um I think optimism was pretty sky high here, and I know especially coming, we're not going to discuss it in this episode. We'll save it for next week's. But that road win in LA and winning the shootout on the road like they did really gave a lot of momentum behind what the Lions were doing and thinking that we were already seeing something special. Not that we were building to something special, that we were already witnessing something special.
And in the moment, I didn't have the benefit of those games after the bye week to kind of base my feelings off of. But what was kind of stuck in my mind was the feeling of needing to see more. And I always have that 2007 campaign in the back of my mind where the Lions raced out to that 6-2 start, absolutely blew the doors off of Denver at Ford Field right before the bye week, where Sean Rogers had that 95-yard scoop and score, and they won one game the rest of the way, missed the playoffs, went 7-9. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I've seen this team go 6-2 before, and they've completely lost their minds the rest of the way. So I needed to see more. So next week, we're going to talk about the third slate of games after the bye week, which includes the game that Phil touched upon briefly against the Los Angeles Chargers, coming back to play a game at home against the Chicago Bears, the Thanksgiving game against the Packers, and then the game following that at the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah. There's still a lot to kind of unpack. Is of course we didn't have shows during the season or anything like that, just the postseason. So plenty of good stuff to break down, and it's honestly really fun. Just because there are some of these games that you kind of slip your mind a little bit. I mean, for me, definitely was the like probably the Raiders game now, because there were so many other moments that I saw while that game was really fun in the moment. It was, the Chargers game, the following week, the Bears, what happened on Thanksgiving. Like, I mean, the Lions really took over Sunday afternoon, and a lot of times into these primetime games. Well, that listen, for us, we're diehards. We're watching. I watched every game during the 0-16 season, so they've got me anyway. But it's for really the rest of Michigan. It became appointment television, right? And for a good portion of America too, when of course we were getting flexed and we were getting these other primetime games that the Lions definitely had the spotlight on them.
You're listening to the Kneecaps for Breakfast podcast. Vince Progar, Phil Byrne, glad you could be along with us. Now we'll kind of get back to present day here and start looking ahead a little bit. So the NFL Scouting Combine kicks off Monday in Indianapolis. So that's really going to be the first time that all the draft eligible players are going to be all in one spot, and really gives these NFL franchises their first look at everybody. And we kind of thought this was going to be a good time for us to really start thinking about the draft, which is roughly 60 or so days away right here in the Motor City. So, Phil, without further ado, let's kind of jump right into some draft discussions here. First of all, kind of give your take on what you are hoping for from the Lions in the draft this year.
Yeah, so I think we've already touched on it a little bit, but to me, it sounds like Brad Holmes, even though we're going to have the cap space, isn't going to be overtly aggressive with spending. So if you're not doing it through free agency and you want to really upgrade this team, he has the track record through the draft. I think that's where we're going to do it. What's different this year is obviously based on our success that we had. We're picking at 29, right?
Bingo.
So this is different. This is not the Rams pick. This is not, a so-so Lion season where you're picking, in the top 12 or something like that. We're for the first time in a long time, and with good reason because we earned it, towards the bottom of the first round. So 29 is the landing spot for the Lions. So quite honestly, it gives you a lot of different options. Obviously, we know this is going to be a quarterback heavy draft. Probably expect at least 3 of the top 4 picks probably to be quarterbacks. What teams end up taking those, I think, is really going to be part of the question. Will there be guys that fall because of that? If so, are there guys on the defensive side of the ball that the Lions are going to want to upgrade and key in on that perhaps we won't pick at 29, but we'll move up, right? So that's kind of the interesting thing here. A couple of the early drafts that I've seen with the Lions have them staying at pick 29 instead of moving up for any guys that might be falling. So we'll kind of get into that here in a little bit. But yeah, no, I definitely think you got 2 pivot points, I would say. I would say pretty much any level of that defense, I think you can't go wrong. I think using the first round pick on. And then also I would say interior offensive line too. I think just obviously Frank Ragnow and his injury and obviously you're hoping to bring back Graham Glasgow, but Jonah Jackson is also a free agent. And Vaitai is, more of the tackle, I guess, but he's probably played his last down as a Lion. So, I think that's also, something that could be in play.
Without any doubt, I think that the biggest need for the Lions is to get a guy across from Aiden Hutchinson on that edge rush. I think what that does is that opens up the other levels of the defense in order to disrupt, number one, help disrupt the passer, but also that allows the interior defensive line to focus on what they got to do in terms of being ready for the run and also trying to create penetration to the quarterback as well. So I think that's their number one point of need. You got to get another corner. And I didn't think in prior drafts, you brought up a good point of where they're going to be picking. And they were picking so high that you didn't really want to be drafting a corner at 6, or you didn't want to be drafting a corner at 3, or drafting even a corner at 12. A corner at 29 makes a little bit more sense in my mind. I think that corners are deep in most drafts. I don't think this is any different this time around. And I think you can find a good corner at 29. I think the edge rusher is of bigger need because if you're able to get to the quarterback quicker, you don't necessarily need your corners to do as much. So it kind of goes hand in hand there. But I think both are equally of crucial need at some point in the draft. It's just a matter of what they tend to place on a priority as far as getting in that first round. And that's to say nothing of, will Brad Holmes move up? He's already demonstrated that if there's a guy on his board that he thinks is a must-have and he's still available, he's going to do what he has to do to go up and get him.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And we've seen that, and he's got the track record for it. And, I think the thing is you're seeing some of these names in these mock drafts go higher than where the Lions are picking. But again, as you mentioned, we're 60 days out, and we haven't had the scouting combines. We haven't had the pro days yet. It's usually a sign of, you're getting an idea of who's going to be available or, what some of the names might be at that pick. But certainly it's still very early in the process.
So here's what we're going to do, Phil. So we're not at this point making our own mock drafts or anything like that. We're going to piggyback off of some of the other mock drafts that just came out over the last couple of days. So this is all fresh information. We have each picked one that we're going to kind of dissect a little bit. And I'm going to have you go first, Phil, kind of go through it as thoroughly or as generally as you want to, depending on what teams, and maybe express whether you're surprised or whether you go along with it, and ultimately how it impacts the Lions and how it impacts some of our other teams in the division, as well as teams that we're going to be closely competing against for this next season.
Yeah, absolutely. So The one that I'm going to be pulling from was just posted today, earlier today. It is from CBS Sports and written by Tom Fornelli. He's a veteran writer over there at CBS Sports. So this one has the Bears picking at number one and picking quarterback, and Justin Fields is on the move. No sign in terms of this mock draft about what the plan is with him, or a trade down or anything like that. So he's got the Bears staying at one and selecting Caleb Williams, which is kind of interesting. Of course, the story that's been out there now is that Justin Fields apparently has unfollowed the Bears on Instagram. So
well, that's because he's going on
you know,
vacation, Phil. I mean, how can you possibly look more into it than that?
right, because that's what one does instead of, I don't know, just silence your phone for a weekend.
I'm gonna pack my bags. I'm gonna
Right.
download my boarding pass to my Apple
Yeah.
Wallet, and I'm going to unfollow everybody on social media. That's how that checklist happens.
Yeah. So anyways, that would be interesting, and I'm sure there's going to be quite a few Bears fans at the draft. So that'll be kind of a rowdy pick if that does end up happening, because then of course, obviously it's going to be, well, what's going to happen with Justin Fields? Are you going to find out immediately after what the move's going to be or what? But it does get interesting in this mock draft right after that. So normally it would be the Washington Commanders making the selection there. We have a trade. In this one, it is the Atlanta Falcons moving up to select Jaden Daniels out of LSU, the Heisman Trophy quarterback, staying in the South and getting to play with the Atlanta Falcons. Bijan Robinson and the slew of receivers that they have there. Kind of interesting. I do like that. I think they need an upgrade at the quarterback spot there. So that would certainly be interesting. We're just going to go through a couple more, and then I want to get on the Lions here because that's what we want to touch on. I'm going to go the top four picks because the fourth one is certainly interesting as well, and then I'm going to go to the Lions at where they're picking. So number 3 overall, that is the New England Patriots. They have in this mock draft staying at 4, not selecting a quarterback. They get that later in the first round. But they are going with, I think, pretty much just about at this point in time, everyone's number 1 overall player in the draft, Marvin Harrison Jr. So that would be interesting. I don't think until the days of Randy Moss being out in New England have they had a receiver with such a huge physical presence like that. They've been having a lot of slot kind of receivers in New England. So that's the play there, obviously, with the new regime. Here's where it's interesting, and this is why I'm going with the number 4 pick. In this mock draft, the Arizona Cardinals trade down. The Minnesota Vikings trade up to select quarterback Drake May. So 3 quarterbacks in the top 4, a division rival gets a quarterback. So 2 rookie quarterbacks in division with the Chicago Bears and the Minnesota Vikings. This is juicy, Vince. This would allow us to have plenty of content for the podcast over the summer going through all of this. Drake May is very, very solid.
And he seems NFL ready to me, but
yeah,
in most cases, and I think CJ Stroud kind of bucked that trend for the Houston Texans this past year, you really can't expect a picking up where you left off from the college game to the pro game. There's going to be a lot of growing pains. A lot of it depends on how solid your offensive line is. And there's going to be a lot of interceptions thrown for the most part also. So it's not necessarily a slam dunk that's going to propel Chicago or Minnesota to be in division contenders just on the fact that they drafted a couple of solid NFL ready quarterbacks.
Correct. So, again, just to recap, that was, so pick 1, it was Chicago, Stan, and picking, of course, Caleb Williams. Number 2, Jaden Daniels for the Atlanta Falcons in a trade-up scenario. Marvin Harrison going 3 to the Patriots, with the Patriots staying there. And then the Vikings trading up to 4 to select Drake May, the quarterback. Going all the way down in this mock draft to pick number 29, There is another quarterback that goes in the first round. It is one pick after the Lions. It was like I just mentioned, the Patriots, the Ravens trading out of the first round with the Patriots. Patriots going Bo Nix. So that'd be kind of interesting there. But nevertheless, the Lions pick. I think this is a pick that would be a little divisive, but I can certainly see why the player and his attributes would fit in well with what we got going on here. Pick 29, Tom Fornelli, CBS Sports. Here we go. Mike Sainristil, cornerback, Michigan, 5'10, 182.
Oh, my wife would have a heart attack.
Prospect rank 106th. Here's what the details say. Watch Sainristil's tape and tell me he isn't the kind of player Dan Campbell and the Lions front office will love. That's true. The Lions need to add more talent to their secondary, and Sainristil showcases great ball skills and route recognition. He's also going 110% all the time and has a fiery, competitive demeanor. One thing to keep in mind is Byron Murphy from Texas. He's like a D tackle. He's still on the board. He goes pick 32, but not a ton of defensive linemen around this pick. So pretty well picked over. So if the Lions are staying at pick 29, that's what has been projected in CBS Sports. Mike Sainristil, not having to go far.
My wife would be in tears on draft night if that were to ever come to fruition. That is that's a bold move right there, and I think that would signify once again, Phil, Brad Holmes saying we had this guy specifically on our board, and we went and got him before anybody else did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just those 4 picks, this is a very, very juicy mock draft, one that I think would have a lot of different storylines coming out of it, and I think he from everything that we saw from him at Michigan, I think he would fit. But obviously, as you did mention, I think I would still prefer obviously defensive line, and then of course it's always a unique picking at 29 and you see prospect ranked 106th, then you're going, okay, well, we like our guys, right? So let's see how it plays out.
So let me kind of enlighten you with a little bit of mock draft of my own here. So this one is from, again, a well-known NFL pundit, Daniel Jeremiah from NFL.com. A caveat to keep in mind with this particular mock draft, this is his second version of this that just came out a couple of days ago. The big caveat to keep in mind with this one is that this does not take into account any trade-ups or trade-downs. So this is just in the alternate universe where everybody stays exactly the same. This is who they would take. So kind of the consensus, once again, is that Chicago Bears staying in that number 1 overall pick, take Caleb Williams. So I think, Bill, I think you and I probably need to do a special segment sometime in the next few weeks about the Justin Fields situation by itself, because I think there is a lot to unpack there. But Jeremiah does take the Bears having Williams as their number 1 overall draft pick. Drake May going 2nd overall to the Washington Commanders. You get Marvin Harrison Jr. off the board at number 3, the Patriots, which signifies that they will probably wind up going the veteran quarterback through free agency route to fulfill their needs. Malik Neighbors, the wide receiver out of LSU, going number 4 to the Cardinals, and routing out the top 5, the first offensive lineman to go off the board, which would make sense with a Jim Harbaugh team trying to fortify that offensive line to help with opening up holes in the run game, which he prefers, as well as trying to keep his prized possession in Justin Herbert a little bit more safe than he was in years past.
Where did he have Jaden Daniels going, out of curiosity?
Oddly enough, he went 1 pick later to the New York Giants at 6. And then the little bit of local flavor there at the number 8th overall pick, the Atlanta Falcons select quarterback out of the University of Michigan, J.J. McCarthy. So thus waving the white flag on the whole Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke experiment from this past year. Keeping things in the division at number 9 overall, the Chicago Bears select Roma Dunze, wide receiver out of Washington, stud receiver, and that would really give the Chicago Bears a real formidable passing offense. You get Williams coming in. You got already DJ Moore on one side. Now you get Roma Dunze on the other side. with Cole Kmet kind of coming into his own last year at tight end. A lot of options for the Chicago Bears through the air. Minnesota at number 11, their first pick is Dallas Turner, edge rusher out of Alabama. And then over the course of the next several picks, you got edge rush, edge rush, edge rush, corner, corner, D tackle. So a lot of the positions of need for the Lions really start to come off the board in bunches. The ones that we had talked about, ones that they're really going to need. So it looks like, by my count, you get about 6 corners coming off the board and about 7 edge rushers coming off the board before the Lions even get to pick at number 29. So who does that leave for the Lions at 29? Again, keeping into account that everybody stays exactly where they are. Nobody moves up, nobody moves down. That gives the Lions, with the number 29th overall, according to NFL's Daniel Jeremiah, Zach Frazier, interior offensive lineman out of West Virginia.
Okay.
So it looks to me that he is going to be a guy who could step in right away at guard, could eventually be the heir apparent to Frank Ragnow at center down the road, and this kind of feels like a Dan Campbell guy at number 29. Now, me personally, Phil, I don't think that the way that this team is set up, particularly on the offensive side, that you use the number 29 overall pick for a down the road type of situation. I think 29 has to be a player who can step in right away and contribute without drop off. So what this kind of shows me, again, assuming that this is not going to be Daniel Jeremiah's scenario where everybody stays the same, I think this means that Brad Holmes is going to have no choice but to move up and get one of his top 2 positions of need, which to me has to be edge rusher or cornerback, because we know they're going to come off in bunches, and I'm not sure if a lot of their guys at those positions are still going to be there at 29 based on what Jeremiah forecasted.
No, I agree with that. I'm a little unfamiliar with the guy's work, at 29, that West Virginia lineman. So, that could be one of those ones that we just have to kind of start seeing that name a little bit more and watching through the scouting combine and kind of having the hype build up for it. But I think it has to be defense, quite honestly. We'll see. I think it's one thing if maybe you're able to get a guy like that somewhere in the second round, maybe through a trade up as well. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
And I think that some targets that you might need to start thinking about is, so let's kind of go with the top 2 that I did. I said that edge rusher was going to be your most important need to fill this offseason. And a guy that I've had my eye on for a little bit has been Jared Verse, a edge rusher out of Florida State. I think he was definitely probably the playmaker on their defense since they really had that resurgence under Mike Norvell. I think going up to get him, Jeremiah has him going at 12 to the Broncos. So that kind of gives you an idea of where they may need to go in order to get a edge rusher who will come in and make an impact that will still be there in the early to mid part of the draft. Let's say they value corner as the more important need. Guy I've had my eye on was Quinton Mitchell, corner out of local institution here, Toledo. I think he provides a nice mix of consistency, speed, and he's a tough guy that the Campbell and Holmes regime has always gone for. I think he's a guy who, again, at Jeremiah has him going at 17 to the Jaguars. Again, a team that also could use some help at corner, so you may need to kind of get out ahead of it if you want to get some playmakers at these positions.
One thing that I found a little interesting in the one that you read, the mock draft that you read, was that JJ McCarthy went number 8? Was that what you said?
8 to the Falcons.
Because I don't think. Okay, well, I guess he went 9 here with the Steelers trading up. So, hey, that's 2 for 2 that he is getting considered as a top 10 pick. So, the more quarterbacks obviously that go, the more likely that, a corner or a defensive lineman or someone like that is going to fall too. Plenty of receivers, going. Keon Coleman, the former state product, in the one that I was looking at, going 26 to Tampa Bay. So it's interesting. There's still a lot of time left to kind of dissect what our targets are going to be, what we're looking at, and kind of what rumors are out there, especially with, when it comes to, how many people from the Lions organization visited this guy, on his pro day and stuff like that. Those are always the stories that you hear. So draft season is here. We're in the early stages of it, but it'll at least give us something to talk about here, because we're definitely in the football winter at this point.
So the NFL Network usually carries live coverage of the NFL scouting combine, and that's going to be taking place over the course of this week. So, Phil, if I may make a suggestion, maybe I'd say the two of us tune into the NFL Network this week and kind of take in some bench pressing or some 40 times.
Okay, yeah, you let me know what you're doing in the gym in the morning. Oh wait, we're watching other guys. Oh
yeah.
Oh, this gets weird. Okay.
And because there's always a surprise here or there, Phil. Maybe somebody just comes out with this exorbitant 40 time, or this guy just absolutely goes nuts in the shuttle drills and all that. There's always a surprise. And what's also nice is you also get to get some interviews from the players. It's really the first time that front offices and coaches get to sit down with these guys. So we'll definitely have some thoughts from Holmes and Campbell and what have you, as well as some of our other teams in the division that we'll be able to capture from the combine.
Yeah, it's really the first big event of the offseason. So yeah, and I think for a lot of these NFL teams, because everything is taped, right? It is streamed live, that really the biggest thing that they get out of it are those in-person interviews where they're getting to meet these players and ask them a series of questions. And again, always got to give the Lions kind of social media team and video department props, but some of the videos that they put out, I remember watching the Sam Laporta one from the combine last year. That was really impressive to kind of see him answer some of the questions and what football meant to him and stuff like that. So those are the things that you kind of get, and what the teams will start to see. We talked about Mike Sanders still in the mock draft that I had. Does he have those traits that would fit what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have, rather than just what we're seeing through a shuttle time or something like that, or for a cone drill time? So yeah, it's happening.
And a lot of it is real world questions. You get guys that come in, and Dan Campbell's sitting there at a marker board. He draws up a little play, and he says, if guy A goes this way and guy B fakes to go this way and goes this way, what would you, as a defender, how would you react to that? And you have basically an opportunity right then and there to give Dan Campbell or whomever you're talking to from a head coaching standpoint, you're able to kind of give them real live window into what's in your mind. So that's real nice too. And then other people kind of take a more bizarre turn to it when they say, in all seriousness, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And you basically have 5 seconds to give them an actual answer just to show how bright of a person you really are. So, yeah. Hey, I guess that's all the fun of the NFL scouting combines.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite ones that I ever heard was, how would you describe the color yellow? And I don't know, put on the spot. I quite honestly, I think I would freeze. I don't know how I would describe the color yellow.
Well, tell you what, Phil, your homework assignment for next week, tell me everything you possibly can about the color yellow. That's the story for us here on this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. So glad you're able to be along with us. We appreciate you liking, subscribing, continuing to do so, and being part of our journey. It's been a lot of fun for us, and we can't wait to continue this as we head into the month of March. For my buddy Phil Byrne across the way, Vince Progar saying good morning, go Lions, forward down the field, over and out.